welcome to the ASI Annual General Meeting. My name is Sasha Courville, and I am the Chair of the Board of Directors, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to this AGM this evening. What I would like to do is cover a few little background and important bits of information before getting into the agenda. The first thing that I'd like to do is acknowledge all First Nations people who are on the lands of which we are meeting today, as well as pay my respects to any First Nations people attending this AGM. I would also like to raise your attention to our antitrust compliance policy. If we could just have the next slide, please. Thank you. A copy or a link to our antitrust compliance policy was sent in the notice of meeting. It is really important that we observe our antitrust compliance policy activities during this AGM and with any meeting of ASI members. Thank you. So the first question that we want to pose to everyone is, what country are you dialing in from? So if you can join Slido and just type in the country that you're dialing in from. There's a few people very, very quick on this, which is fantastic. And some large countries that I think that means that there's many people coming from there. But we'll just take a couple more minutes to get people used to Slido, to fill in the country that you're dialing in from, so that we just get a bit of a snapshot of who's dialing in to this AGM today. Thank you. The agenda for today's AGM is as follows, and this will cover the next 90 minutes or so. Starting off, you have a board chair report from me. I will then hand over to Fiona for the CEO report. And then we have two interactive discussions. First of all will be the ASI strategy Q&A with the directors that Fiona will facilitate, and then there'll be a Q&A with the Secretariat. So the first item of business for the AGM is acknowledging the elected directors for 2024. It is the responsibility of the ASI board to play a stewardship role on behalf of members and make sure that ASI remains viable and focuses on the future as well as thriving. ASI's board has a multi-stakeholder governance structure with 2 representatives from the production and transformation class, 2 from industrial users, and 2 from civil society, plus 2 independent directors for a total of 8. Directors serve 2-year terms on a rotating basis, so nominations and elections by members are held every year. This year, we warmly welcome Julia Batho and Salman Abdullah, newly elected this year. We also welcome back Jan Bockelman and Gerald Rebitzer, who have both been re-elected for another term. They join continuing directors, Catherine and Matthias, and independent directors, Raj and myself. Salman is a regretful apology for today. And the last thing to do when it comes to directors is to convey our absolute thanks and appreciation to Pippa Howard and Rosa Garcia Pinheiro for their service on the ASI board up until April 2024. They have both been long-serving members of the board and have contributed a significant amount to the development and the growth and the leadership of ASI, and we thank them sincerely. Thank you. I'd also like to acknowledge the new Standards Committee members elected in 2024. This is a very hardworking committee, as I'm sure you all know, dealing with both the big picture of how to drive change with the fine detail of how to draft normative requirements and implementation guidance. A big thanks for the time and efforts of these committee members on behalf of the entire ASI membership. This year, we're also introducing 2 observer roles for IPAF members as a capacity building opportunity and to support their growing engagement in our work. These are non-voting positions, but they can act as proxies or alternates in the event that another civil society or IPAF rep is unable to attend a meeting. We believe the strong grassroots participation in the new committee from countries including Guinea, Ghana, India, Australia, and Suriname further add to the integrity of ASI's processes. We extend our sincere thanks to all outgoing committee members for their contributions, and in particular, we'd like to acknowledge Kendall Salcito from Nomagaya, who served 6 years as a Standards Committee co-chair. A phenomenal effort, and we really do appreciate all that contribution. The broader contributions of many working group participants and the Secretariat to the work of the Standards Committee is also acknowledged. And I just would like to highlight on the page, you'll see names written in white as well as in a pinky orange color. And that shows you that are some of those elected Standards Committee members have been re-elected and some are newly elected. So we have a really good balance of people that are continuing on in the Standards Committee, as well as new participation and with diverse perspectives, which I think is a really healthy indicator of the work of the Standards Committee and its contributions. The second formal item of business for the AGM relates to ASI's financial performance. A signed copy of ASI's financial statements and director's report, along with the director's declaration and the independent auditor's report, was emailed to members with the notice of the AGM. In accordance with Australian law, it is not necessary for members to vote on or otherwise approve these statements. They were circulated in advance of this meeting to give members an opportunity to review and consider them, and to be able to raise any questions or comments at this AGM. This slide that's up on the screen right now reproduces the statement of profit and loss contained in the circulated financial statements for 2023. It also, for comparison, gives you the 2024 budget. After 3 consecutive years with an operating surplus from 2020, 2021, and 2022, ASI has a planned deficit for 2024 as part of its investment strategy. There was a small loss in 2023 of $87,000, which is approximately 1.5% of 2023 revenue. The 2024 budget again plans a deficit. The purpose of this is to invest previous surpluses in line with ASI strategy. Our cash reserves are sitting above our operating reserves target, which is around 4 months of annual expenditure. So overall, ASI is in a very good financial position and has the resources to deliver on its strategy. The next slide just gives a little bit of detail and some of the insights behind the 2023 financial results. So as you can see, revenue is above budget, and there's an 18% increase on the previous year. The result for 2023, strong growth and retention of ASI members. So in the year, there were 74 new members, which represents 21% growth. And we're partway through the board's planned deficit investment budget for 2023. So continuing, the plan is to have a small deficit to be able to invest previous surpluses into the Secretariat largely, and the ability of the organization to meet growing demands. This is all underpinned by careful management of expenditure, with the majority of activity lines at or under budget. And as mentioned, this really underpins the growth of the Secretariat to build capability, deliver, and manage future growth. The next slide gives a little bit more detail in terms of where ASI's resources are allocated. And as you can see, over the last 6 years, and the last line, which is grayed out a little bit, is the 2024 budget. 70% of ASI's budget in 2024 goes to the Secretariat. As ASI's membership scales, and we now have more than 350 members, our team needs to scale as well to support the implementation of our strategy. Since September last year, ASI has welcomed 9 new colleagues across standards, assurance, IT, finance, learning, and corporate governance, and there are 2 more standards-related roles to be recruited. In terms of project-related expenditure, this has grown in line with external grant income to work on capacity building with communities. And that little green travel and governance line, you can see that travel is increasing in the post-COVID era. This includes convening our annual board and standards committee meetings, as well as an annual Northern and Southern Hemisphere retreats for our growing team who work remotely. ASI also participates in periodic industry events for in-person opportunities to connect with members and stakeholders. In terms of governance and regular feedback on how we're doing from a governance perspective, each year for the last 8 years, ASI has conducted a governance survey of the board, standards committee, and members. I'd like to thank everyone who has taken the time to input into that survey. It is really important for us to be able to get feedback on how we're going and what we're doing well and where we can improve. The board reviews the feedback in detail, and we use it to agree on priority actions for the year ahead. A summary of the survey results was circulated with the AGM notice, but these are just a few highlights, and we're happy to take questions on any of this, as well as the financial statements in the director's Q&A that's coming up shortly. So in terms of key highlights, how members want to hear from ASI, members remain engaged and eager to learn, and focusing on improving standards implementation. We've had really positive feedback on ASI communications, plus good ideas for future focus areas. We've also, in terms of thinking about our governance and engagement, we've had good feedback on the board and standards committee on how we can further improve connection and focus. And there has been interest for in-person engagement from some respondents. ASI also finds these valuable, but they are resource intensive, and they're difficult to scale equitably with a membership that is growing all over the world. So we will continue to prioritize effective online engagement and delivery and leverage opportunities, such as in the green note that you've just seen. We strongly encourage anybody who's able to or interested to join the ASI team at the World Aluminium Conference in London, which is the 14th to the 16th of May, coming up very, very soon, co-hosted with CRU and IAI, which will include an interactive workshop on day 3. And this slide is really just flagging our 4 sustainability priority areas that are embedded in our strategy and theory of change as well: climate change, circularity, nature positive, and human rights. I think the most important thing for me to flag is that these are interconnected issues. We need to think about them and the linkages between them. We cannot deal with them in isolation. It won't work. We also recognize that each one of these issues poses significant challenges, not just for the aluminium industry and value chain, but for all industries. But we do need to keep moving on all of them. They're all critical for us to be able to have a thriving economy and healthy societies on this planet. So we need to figure out how we can progress in addressing each of these issues through the value chain. So what we'd like to do is ask everybody using Slido again, and really we're keen to hear from you on what do you think is the most important thing from your perspective for ASI to deliver on in the next 10 years. And so that could be a word, it could be a phrase, it could be 3 words, whatever you think are the key things that the ASI as an organization, as a network, as a standards and assurance vehicle, what is the most important thing for us to be able to deliver on in the next 10 years? Please put in your answers now. This will be really important for us. We can pick up on these perhaps board members during the panel might reflect on some of the issues that are being put up here, as well as certainly we'll be taking this on board in regular discussions on strategy and where do we need to dial up. It's really important to hear from members around what you think are the most important things for us to deliver on as ASI. So we'll give another minute for people to be able to respond. Thank you for your feedback. Keep going. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone, for that exercise. That's really helpful. I'm going to hand over to Fiona for the CEO report.
Thanks, Sasha, and hello, everybody. So I want to dig a little bit more into our strategy, as Sasha's been talking about, and how we're going about implementing that. I think we've skipped over, there we go, perfect. So this is our strategy, which we've summarised on a page, and then we also call our theory of change, how we are moving from the strategies we have in place towards the change we want to see. And you can see across the top those long-term goals that align with those 4 sustainability priorities: climate, circularity, nature, human rights, and social value, which Sasha touched on before. So I want to focus on the short-term outcomes in that 2022 to 2025 area and how we're working to address those at the moment. The first of those short-term outcomes is around scale. So how do we scale learning, improvement and exchange through the programs that ASI is delivering across that whole of the aluminium supply chain and across the many stakeholders that we're engaging with? We do that through a number of ways, and I'm highlighting just a few of those here. Firstly, we have our educational learning platform where we try to support that learning that we believe is important for those that are on their sustainability journey. We want to continue to improve this platform. So at the moment, we are actually doing some interviews with members around what their needs are, what their wishes are in this space. So if you're interested in contributing to that process, please get in touch with Janelo, our membership director. We also hold regular thematic webinars, our 45 minutes on sessions. We held 15 last year. We've started them off this year. We have another one this month, which I'll talk a bit more about. If you're interested in a particular topic, let us know. And we're always also looking for members to feature in those webinars and talk a little bit about some of the challenges or issues that they're tackling and how they can support others through that sort of exchange, through their own learning journey and improvement journey as well. So improvement, of course, is a key goal of our standards and certification program. We did a big step up in the standards with the 2022 revision, and we're seeing that those new requirements are opening up some gap areas in terms of conformance. So while that might feel challenging, if that's you, it's also really important for the program as a whole because it provides a really clear step forward in that improvement space. Because as companies look to close those gaps and address non-conformances, put in place corrective action, we can start to really see that change that we're looking to drive. And with more than 220 audits taking place last year, and with the growth in members, now 350, expecting to see that continue to grow, you can see that whole scale piece starting to hinge off how we support that learning, improvement and exchange through our programs. Our next key focus area for us is our digital investment. We have a couple of project areas that I'll talk about a little bit more. And our third area is how we contribute to, leverage and collaborate with others on initiatives and methodologies that can meet our shared sustainability goals. And I have a couple of project areas and work streams that we're working on there too that I'll talk about in a moment. So in our strategy, we've mapped out what we call 6 key success areas for this year that help us to meet those outcomes that I've just talked about. The first one is our entity level 1.5 degree aligned greenhouse gas pathways method and rolling that out to all of our members and auditors this year. The second area we're focusing on is we're looking ahead to the next standards revision already and delivery of that in 2027. We're expanding our standards team and looking at how that can integrate across other work streams. The third area we've been focused on for a while and will continue to be this year is our complaints mechanism, making sure that's timely, effective, rights compatible, but also the complaints mechanisms of our members as well. Fourthly, we are doing a lot of work in what we call our Beyond Certification workstream with our Indigenous Peoples Advisory Forum, or IPAF, and there's a range of projects that we're working on that look to build capacity on the ground at the community level. And 5 and 6 are projects in our digital work stream. Firstly, Elemental 2.0, a rebuild of our existing online assurance platform, Elemental. And once we have that in place, we're looking ahead to some really exciting work where we can automate some data flows and create much more interactive dashboards to access certification data. Next. Thanks. So let's have a look at each of these in a little bit more detail. Firstly, our greenhouse gas pathways method, much anticipated, published in February. This has been developed by ASI in-house, by Chris Bayliss, in fact, who's on this call, and we'll be happy to take any questions on this. And it's been endorsed by the ASI Standards Committee and Board to use under Performance Standard version 3. It's the only aluminium sector specific 1.5 degree aligned method currently available, and it's been specifically designed for entities all along the value chain, whether from upstream production right through into downstream use. How does the method work? Well, it uses a sectoral decarbonisation approach. And what that means is that it's converging on a 2050 sector-wide intensity target. So if you're a similarly scoped entity, no matter what your starting point is, all of your peers are converging on that same end goal intensity level. So why are we taking this approach? Firstly, it's inclusive. So your performance is going to be judged on your alignment with your own defined emissions reduction pathway, not on where you might be starting from. So let's have a look at what that means for the primary aluminium sector, for example. You can see here there's a range of slopes from a 2018 baseline that might range from 3 tonnes of CO2 equivalent per tonne of aluminium produced right up to 30 tonnes per tonne. And you can see the steepness of those slopes vary depending on the starting point, but they're all converging on that same endpoint at 2050. So if we step back out of that, you can see that that range of slopes means that it's challenging, particularly for entities with that higher starting point, that higher baseline emissions intensity. They are going to require deeper and faster emissions reduction, but it can also be challenging even for those with a lower scope, because maybe the gains, the easy gains, have already been achieved. And so there's still a slope, there's still a reduction that needs to happen as the sector as a whole converges towards that 2050 target. So overall, it's ambitious. It's aligned with the aluminium sector's 1.5 degree scenario that's been developed by the International Aluminium Institute and other work in this space. And therefore, it's trying to fit within the associated carbon budget for that scenario. So this method is now applicable to all certifying entities under the version 3 performance standard, and it tucks in under criterion 5.3 on emissions reduction plans. All audits from the 1st of June must now start to use this ASI endorsed method. This is the only method that's currently endorsed, so this is the one that you need to become familiar with. You can, of course, also use it for broader target setting, looking at different scenarios and so on, and we've got a range of materials available to help you do that. So you can learn more from the method guidance, which has been published. We also have a terrific lesson on educational with 25 modules that take you through the context, the history, the sectoral background, as well as the detail of how the tool works. And Chris has also developed an Excel-based calculation tool, which has all of the assumptions and the modelling sitting behind it. And you can just enter in really just a few numbers to map what that pathway looks like, just like we looked at on that slide before. You can find all of this as well as some explainer webinars on the ASI website. We'll show you exactly where it is. If you go on to the front page, scroll down, you'll see there's some featured news. It's on the left there. Click to read more and you'll find all of those materials available there for you to use, as well as any interested stakeholder who may want to access those. You can connect with the team as well. As Sasha mentioned, we'll be in London next week at the CRU World Aluminium Conference, and we're specifically holding a workshop on this method on the 16th of May. And we'll also be in the breakout areas if you want to chat with us. And Chris is also happy for you to reach out to him for individual support, discussions, and bespoke training. So this is an important piece of work. I hope you're aware of it, and please take the time to become familiar. Our second focus this year is preparing for that 2027 revision, and we're expanding the standards team and mapping out the work that's needed for that. In March, we had a new standards director, Chelsea, join us, which is fantastic, and she's already working with our newly elected standards committee, who Sasha introduced before, and there's some onboarding processes that are already underway. In Q2 and Q3, we've got a few things that we're busy on. Firstly, we're rolling out some new updates to the assurance manual, which has been approved by the standards committee and the board. Chelsea's working on a high-level 3-year standards work plan. We're preparing for an in-person standards committee meeting in September, and we're also planning to recruit 2 additional team members for the standards area. And we'll be pulling all of that together in Q4 to start some really detailed planning from the inputs that come out of the committee meeting and reaching out further to members as well as we start to put those plans together. So how can you get involved? Well, we have some working groups that are currently active. It was great to see the interest in circularity on that Slido poll before. So by all means, if you're not already, please reach out to us to get involved in that. They're working on some best practice guidelines and also some specific sectoral discussions as well. The climate working group continues to be active, and it's a forum to raise issues for discussion in plenary, and there'll be some further work on the pathways method this year. So if you're interested in this standards work, please reach out to Chelsea as our standards director to discuss any issues you may have of interest or to flag some expertise you might be able to bring to working group discussions. Our next area of focus this year has been our complaints mechanism. And complaints mechanisms are a really important way for affected persons to gain access to effective remedy. They can be used to promote dialogue and to help resolve disputes, but more importantly, they can be an important channel for communications and to identify problems. So we did some work last year on updating the complaints mechanism, and we published that version 4 in February. So our complaints mechanism is designed to handle complaints on standard setting processes, certifications, auditor conduct, policies and procedures, and so on. And the updates that we published in February included being a bit clearer on who are the parties to a complaint and what are the grounds for making one. Having another look and being clearer again on the processes for claims management, investigation and decision making. And within that, really emphasising the role of dialogue, because our experience over the last year has been that that's really critical to helping to understand issues and help to resolve them amongst parties. And most importantly, we made sure we had input from IPAF, from our Indigenous Peoples Advisory Forum, as rights holders in the process, and to understand their perspective about what is more accessible and rights compatible. We did have several complaints in 2023, and we've advised of that in some communications, and we've also published these on the ASI website. So if you go to that link there or find it from the menu on the website, you'll be able to download the mechanism and see the complaints and how they've been handled so far. So in addition to obviously updating our complaint for ASI as an organisation, we believe it can also be a reference for your own complaints mechanism. All ASI certified entities need to implement a complaints resolution mechanism, and it needs to fulfil those effectiveness criteria of the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights. You should be reviewing it every 5 years, and you should be disclosing your latest version. And you can find more guidance on that under criterion 3.4. And just as importantly, we'll have an interactive session later this month on the 29th of May on our complaints mechanism and an illustrative case study that we'll be exploring. So I think we're just going to be posting in the chat to everybody a link to register for that. Our fourth really important area that we've been working on is what we call our Beyond Certification workstream, and that's primarily engaging with and through our Indigenous Peoples Advisory Forum, or IPAF. The aim of this work is to amplify our impact with stakeholders and rights holders outside of the certification program, so looking at broader capacity building opportunities. We've been fortunate to receive external grant funding for projects, including in Guinea, where we've held local community workshops in all of the bauxite regions there, reaching over 120 villages, and likewise in Australia, where we've held a wide range of workshops as well with Indigenous communities across Queensland, Northern Territory, and Western Australian bauxite regions too. On the methodology front, we have been working with the Sami people, particularly Protect Sápmi in Norway, on an Indigenous-led, participatory and cumulative impact assessment methodology. This has been really important work led by Protect Sápmi, and we've been fortunate that they've shared that with us through IPAF in order to help build the capacity of other IPAF participants. That's enabled us to support the piloting of this methodology in India at 2 bauxite mining sites with Adivasi communities, and we're currently working on a new project in Australia with other external funding partners where we look to implement this methodology in a new context as well. Another exciting project area is the development of some new guidance on free prior informed consent, or FPIC, from an Indigenous perspective. And this project's been initiated and led by our IPAF members. It's focusing very much on practical implementation for members, for auditors, and just as importantly, for communities as well. And the Secretariat, particularly Mark, is helping to support other IPAF-led projects and their development, looking for funding sources and things like that. So how can you be involved in this work? Well, if you have Indigenous or local communities near your operations, then please do connect them with us and our IPAF network. And to do that, just get in touch with Mark, our Director of Research and IPAF advisor. So we'll turn now to a couple of digital projects which are really critical to these foundational short-term outcomes that will help us move towards our long-term goals. So we're calling Elemental 2.0 our rebuild of our online assurance platform. It's a really critical project in our digitisation portfolio. The aim of the design here has been to enhance insights around the data that the certification process gathers, the accessibility of that, and also the performance of the platform as a whole. The focus for the launch is on synchronizing the data that we already have and rebuilding existing features in the new environment in which we are going to host this. Post-launch, that won't be the end of it. We'll be looking at ongoing improvements based on your feedback, auditor feedback, and from the team after the launch, as well as some other functionalities that we have in mind for early implementation. So our timing, we're targeting to make the platform launch ready by the middle of this year, but we will be doing rigorous testing and quality checks, so we'll be keeping you updated with progress updates in a timely fashion. Once we do launch Elemental 2.0, this will be the stepping stone for kind of the end goal here, which is to automate a lot more of the data flows and to create an interactive microsite for certifications, replacing the current public dashboard within the NAC platform. We're hoping that this is going to offer much more comprehensive insights, comparability across certifications, and interactivity, including database level access through APIs and so on. You can see some screenshots here of some of the graphic design that we've commissioned in line with what we want to be featuring through this dashboard. And so once we've launched Elemental 2.0, our IT team will be focusing its attention on starting to build these functionalities out as well, which will be extremely exciting. So I'd definitely like to be thanking our hardworking ASI team who bring their passion and commitment to ASI's work every single day. I hope you appreciate them as much as I do. You know, their hard work is really what carries the whole organisation. So a big thanks to everybody here. So we're going to turn now to our strategy panel with directors. So I would ask all the directors on the call to turn on their videos so that we can see you all. And I'm going to have a look at some of the questions that we have in the chat, which might be more related to the board versus the Secretariat. And I think I'm going to start with the first question from Marcel. And perhaps I'll put this to you, Catherine, first, and then to others who may want to comment on this one. So Marcel asks, after ASI has gained many new members recently, and there's many new certifications, what does the board, for example, what kind of focus topics does the board see for the upcoming standards revision or for ASI as a whole? We saw some of the things that also came in as Slido as well, for ASI to remain a relevant standard and for the program to remain relevant too. Catherine, would you like to start with that?
Yes. Do you hear me?
Perfectly.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I don't know. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I guess for some of you, it's quite late already. I'm thinking of the Australian team. So thank you for being here. Yeah, so if we look at, I think when we, and I've been sitting in the standards committee before sitting at the board, so I kind of figure out all the processes that we've been through in order to revise standards. We've done this already. I mean, we've done the first standard, like a second one, because the first was really a draft, and then the newest one. And there are some questions that arise along the process that we don't necessarily we're not necessarily able to tackle immediately in the revision, and that we kind of are getting a little bit piled up for the next round. And it seems to me that with the experience we have on the previous versions and on the current one, there are a couple of things that we know we need to review for the next standard, and they are around in order to ensure a better harmonization of certification, to enhance the credibility of the standard. We will have to face the topic of performance-related criteria and proof of those criteria throughout the certification process. Now, this is a complex topic, and we've seen with the pathway that this is a complex topic, because the pathway is actually very much performance driven, and there are some hard data that you have to provide in order to be certified according to this pathway, to the pathway that has been defined. So we see that already, and then there's been a lot of discussions around this pathway in order to get to where we are right now, which is a pretty good outcome considering the difficulties that were in order to build that. But if we start thinking about extending that to other topics where it would be beyond the proof that you have a policy, that you have actions in place, that they can be proven on site, that you actually deliver a performance on topics such as biodiversity or human rights or circularity, as these are some of the key issues that we know are part of the aluminium value chain. This is a kind of very difficult topic that we will have to handle, but it seems to me that we are heading into this direction to really enhance the credibility of the standard. That's one area. There is also some work on the assurance system that supports the standard, and that would help also harmonize and strengthen the certification process, which is the heart of the credibility of the standard today. Is really the certification process, which, by the way, is already pretty good if we think of other standards existing. So these are some of the issues that we see we would have to handle for the revision of the standard.
Thanks. Catherine. Matthias, would you like to add anything to that?
Sure. Thank you very much. Thank you, Marcel, for your question. I think another very important topic for ASI in the future and also right now is topic of decarbonization. It was already mentioned multiple times in the little chart we had at the end of Sasha's presentation with the input from the participants. And I think it will be extremely critical to set the right standards in that direction and not only comply with the international and member requirements that we have right now, but also to develop the standards in a direction that we can anticipate the future developments regarding that topic and comply with all regulatory and membership requirements. So I think decarbonization extremely important.
Thank you. And I'll also ask Gerald and then Raj and Julia, I guess, to everyone to have a bit of a thought on that. Gerald, did you want to go next?
Yeah, there is honestly not so much to add. I would echo, like, indeed, from also where I sit, industrial users, let's say more downstream, it's indeed decarbonization. I think the point is, if I compare aluminum to other industries, it's actually quite advanced on that, at least on the data and of the involvement. But now with those standards, it's really about, yeah, really implementing that. And you showed that that graph, and specifically when you have this kind of aligned more or less with science-based targets, like where the slope kind of the increases by more or less a factor 2 from 2030, I think, and one needs to get ready for that now, because we know it's investments, etc. It's not energy efficiency, it's not incremental improvements, it's really step change. And I think there I see a key part from kind of the needs, and that can also then drive the further growth of ASI, because if we can really provide solutions there and have members who can provide then decarbonized solutions, that is really what the industry overall needs.
Thanks. And Julia, maybe you might like to share reflections, say from a human rights perspective, what those key challenges are in this and many sectors.
Sure, and thanks, Fiona. I'm delighted to have joined the board, and just to emphasize that I'm here in my individual capacity. So while many of you will know IHRB, the organization I work for, I'm here in my individual capacity. So these are my opinions as, board director. I think what Catherine said is very much true, not just for this industry, but for all the industries we see struggling with the very fine balance between adaptation, making sure we're looking at the context-specific circumstances, but also the pace of developing or updating standards, right? It's not realistic to expect that any standard, whether they are voluntary or mandatory, will keep up with the pace of change, especially in context of ongoing conflicts, multiple conflicts, multiple crises. The pace of change is very, very fast. And so making sure that we can adapt and keep up as much as possible, but also recognizing that there will always be an imbalance in the pace of adaptation and the actual changes on the ground, and that this is not exclusive to the aluminium industry. So that is one. And the other is, I think when it comes to human rights, a big challenge is also the ongoing need for consistent messaging. And so I see that when people are asking for consolidation and harmonization of standards, that is obviously needed, because the consolidation of those messages and of those requirements is vital to ensure compliance as well. But again, how do you adjust to the different journeys and the different paces that people are traveling? So I think these are the main challenges when it comes to human rights.
That's fantastic. And Raj, I know you're dialing in on the phone, but would you like to share some thoughts on how ASI and other standards are grappling with this kind of journey?
Sure, I can do that. And sorry for not being on video. Look, I think broadly what's happening in the general ESG space is accelerating at some pace across many dimensions of ESG. So I think one of the challenges for ASI and other groups like ASI is how to keep pace with the change of expectations, so the acceleration of expectations, while bringing along a significant cohort of the industry along at a sustainable pace for them. So I think quite a delicate balancing act, and one that I think ASI is well positioned as a leadership organization to take.
Thanks, Raj. And Jan, did you want to offer anything? I know you're coming more from the finance side as some of the skills that you bring, but welcome any thoughts you might like to share on that.
Yes, I think many good things have been said already. So from that perspective, there's not much to add. I think one theme which, as it is talking about the next generation standards and board discussions, it's obviously the role of the indigenous people and how indigenous people's roles. We have a lot of initiatives at the moment, which are obviously excellent, but how can we further formalize them in the next rounds of standard would be an element which I would like to mention as well. But other than that, nearly all has been said already. Thank you.
Thank you. That's fantastic. So we've got a question from Hugo around how does ASI see opportunities to support members in aligning activities towards ASI certification with other standards like the Task Force for Nature-Related Financial Disclosures, or TNFD, ICMM, which is International Council on Mining and Metals, Nature Position Statement, and so on. How might we be collaborating? But I know we've had some discussion about TNFD in particular, so I might ask Sasha to reflect on how that interaction, the discussions that we've had, and reflections on how standards can work within that space.
Right. Thanks very much, Fiona. I think there's significant opportunities for ASI to support members in connecting with, aligning with other frameworks and tools and systems that are out there. I think there's a sub-question around ISO processes and systems as well. I mean, the whole point of ASI is to try to drive positive change through the aluminium value chain using kind of the tools that we have around standards assurance, education, among other things, advocacy. And interacting with other systems is absolutely critical. And I mean, to the earlier question around the harmonization work and needing to align things, to some extent, you need to think about there's different kinds of levels of initiatives, so that the Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosures is a very high level framework document coming out of the financial sector, like the TCFD before it. And it's largely focused on disclosure as a framework that requires a whole bunch of things underneath it to be in place in an organization to be able to report effectively, driving into strategy, metrics, governance, et cetera. So there's clear alliance and opportunities, I think, with the TCFD. ASI has done a lot of work, and it's a priority to work with the financial sector and understand how the financial sector can use ASI and its standard as a vehicle for engagement, for understanding, and for recognition of performance. And that will support any future TNFD activities from the financial sector going through the aluminium value chain. So clearly there's an opportunity and need for harmonization. When it comes to actual certification systems, we actively seek out where there are overlaps and linkages, and where there's a value for members kind of looking through recognition programs, so that if you're certified to ASI, you can meet a component part of another standard or meet certain requirements. So we're always actively on the lookout for those opportunities. It just makes sense. It just reduces a lot of work and makes the most of what is a really powerful, multifaceted standard and assurance program.
Thanks, Sasha. And yes, just to add to that, we do have that standards benchmarking and harmonization working group, which we welcome members to participate, which does look at what these linkages are like and how they might either be brought to members through guidance or just, making resources available right through to a formal kind of recognition within the standard. So there are a couple of ISO standards that are formally recognized, where if you have done those ISO certifications, that it ticks off in effect those aspects of the ASI performance standard. And that flows through in Elemental. There's a specific question, which is what certifications do you have in place that match those scopes, and how that then therefore counts towards the assurance process to create some efficiencies there. But we welcome input and questions, around these, and further engagement in that working group. So Marika, who's on the Secretariat panel shortly, can also speak to some of this work as well. So we have a question about demand, but I might save that one for the Secretariat panel. And so one of the questions that I would like to pose now. We've talked a little bit about risks. We had some of those questions come through in the Slido discussion. Is there someone who would like to reflect on what really stood out to you as we saw those kind of topics ebb and flow? Circularity stood out to me. So I wonder, Gerald, if that's something that you would like to speak to, both how the aluminium sector is doing relative to other sectors like plastics or paperboard and so on, some of the pros and some of the challenges for this sector.
No, I think, you know, from my perspective, indeed, we talked about decarbonization as a #1 priority, but circularity is probably, you know, #2, at least when we look from our perspective, also our customer requirements. And in that sense, it's, you know, there, let's say, inherently aluminum is very well positioned due to the nature of the material. But obviously we also have quite some gaps, like we are in the business of packaging. So basically, let's say the losses in the system you to a large extent have in packaging. You know, you don't have it in building materials. That's just a question of entropy. And obviously there is now more and more requirements on circularity, design for recycling, that then, you know, the aluminum is used in a format and in a way that it's suitable for recycling in the real world, where, let's say, the preconditions are really very good. But in order to make this happen, and linked to this, where I would also say where we probably have some opportunities when we talk about also further development of ASI and the standards, to really provide some clarity, for instance, in terms of recycled content, because nowadays you also have a proliferation, I would say, even of recycled content certifications for different materials, but even within one material, and there to, you know, to provide a consistent system, which also then is essentially consistent with the measurement of the GHG impact and the ASI mass balance, which we also have in place. I think that would be a key in terms of credibility, because today there's also sometimes a tendency from some actors to have a pick and choose mentality. Here we have one approach, we like this, we take another approach. So I think we need you know, a consistent approach, and I think they are designed for recycling, and then, you know, consistent reporting and accounting for recycled content with the related impacts on sourcing as well as on GHG emission is a key task. And I think there we could actually, with the very robust system ASI has in place, you know, we have an opportunity to also shape that debate for aluminum and potentially, you know, even for other materials.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Catherine or Matthias, did you have anything that stood out to you from the poll? You just need to unmute yourself, Catherine, if you're going to talk.
Yes, I mean, the decarbonization was clearly something stated. Here we have now the pathway, but the main challenge is now ahead in terms of delivering on that pathway. And we know that there's quite a lot of work and money as well to involved into, if I look at the mission partnership work on just the ELYSIS, and I mean the inert anode cost of investment. And if we look, you know, electricity greening everywhere, and all of this is quite a lot of, and it's not just the aluminum industry, it's also an infrastructure topic. So here there are several initiatives such as the FMC and others that I think are interesting to join, and I would encourage people to join this. But yeah, there are lots of challenges ahead that I think ASI can help with to the limit that then it becomes a member. At some point, there are some member-related actions that needs to happen. It's not just to be certified, but and to be part of ASI. I think everyone has to do their own work. I still think that there's some here we really have to work towards a situation where it's not a competitive topic, but it's really a partnership topic. This between customers, between suppliers, between peers. I know there are some challenges around this, obviously, but we see more and more work together on the innovation side, for instance, which are pre-competitive works, and these are things that also could be fostered by ASI.
Great, thanks. And Matthias, I think you were going to speak. It was a bit unfair for me to throw you simultaneously, so please go.
Thank you very much. Yeah, maybe just to add on that, goes in a similar direction. 2 points that stood out for me were comment regarding the branding of ASI, like intensify the brand presence and the brand identity, and also the growth factor, like making more companies or asking more companies to become ASI members or ASI certified. I think due to the large amount of different standards that are currently in different industries underway that all address different kind of sustainability topics, it's extremely important to take on that challenge and take a growth path, and also go into new industries that use aluminium, but that are not to a large extent certified by ASI. So I think it's very good comments. It's something we need to look at, and something where we need to gain more pace.
Thanks, Matthias. And maybe just one last question to the board, maybe to you, Raj, coming from your assurance background. What are you seeing are the challenges for auditors in this voluntary standard space?
It's actually a really good question. So I guess one of the things I am seeing is an increase in stakeholder expectations, and therefore a corresponding increase in audit volume and audit intensity across the world, but not a corresponding increase in, if you like, an accredited workforce to supply those audit services. So I think to the extent that audit and assurance can be A, streamlined, and B, pathways exist for those auditors and assurers of sufficient quality to get onto the audit trail. I think those would be the, for me, some of the key capacity building constraints in the audit and assurance space.
Perfect. Really appreciate that. Thanks, Raj. So with that, we want to allow some time for the Secretariat panel as well. So I want to thank all the directors for their input and the questions that we've had so far. Please bring more questions through. We've only had a few. We've had some in advance, so I know Sasha's going to lead with those first. So I'm going to hand back to you, Sasha, and ask our Secretariat who's on the panel to turn your cameras on now. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Fiona. And as mentioned, we will move into the Q&A session with the Secretariat. So we are joined by wonderful, talented members of the Secretariat, and we have lots of questions. But as Fiona mentioned, please do keep them coming. So we will come back to a couple of the questions that are still in the Q&A for a Secretariat perspective on them, including the demand one, but I will kick off with a few questions that we received in advance of the AGM as well. So one question I have from Johannes from Mercedes-Benz. I would be interested to learn more about the impact ASI has achieved through its audits in Guinea. With the imminent re-audit of CBG, can you explain details of the corrective action plan ASI has developed after the first audit, if one was developed, how ASI has supported CBG since the implementation of these corrective actions, and how ASI has synchronized these efforts with ongoing mediation process led by the CAO? So perhaps maybe Cam might talk a little bit about the audit process and who does what, and then maybe hand over to Mark to talk a little bit more about activities in Guinea.
Yeah, thanks, Sasha, and thanks to Johannes for his question too. Look, firstly, ASI does not develop corrective actions for entities. As you may or may not know, that is up to the entity to develop those actions and then complete them and implement them. And that's checked at subsequent audits. So I think that's an important point to raise, that the corrective actions are followed up in surveillance audits and recertification audits as well. And that also drives change as well to make sure that it's actually been done. The auditor and the audit team do review and comment on the corrective actions. They do review them and go, yeah, that's appropriate, that's commensurate and relevant to the audit findings. And again, look, obviously the auditor is not involved in any of that implementation work too, because that would be a pretty blatant conflict of interest there. In terms of the impacts specific to certification, you know, it's the identification of any non-conformances and to a lesser extent opportunities, but mainly the identification of non-conformances. And in Saberget's case, the awarding of provisional certification means that they're now locked in to addressing those non-conformances identified in the audit. I don't know the number specifically, but it was in well over a dozen. Those non-conformances need to be addressed promptly if it wishes to maintain certification beyond that 12-month provisional certification period. So one could argue that if it's not for the audit and the certification, the addressing of those non-conformances or deficiencies on site may not be as prompt or may actually not even be completed. Or if they are, they're not completed to a satisfactory level. So the certification is a primary driver for change. It may not necessarily be the sole driver, but it's certainly the primary driver for change through those improvement actions. And look, thirdly, anecdotally, the certifications in Guinea of Saberget and GAC, the EGA facility there in Guinea, have generated interest from other Ghanaian bauxite producers as well. And they're asking the question about ASI membership too. So with that also comes certification obligations, and that drives improvement and change. And there you go. So the wheel's spinning as a result. Fiona touched on the recent on-the-ground activities in her chat up front today about what ASI is doing in Guinea. But I thought it might be best here, as Sasha's just mentioned, we'll hand over to Mark, who can provide a bit more detail on that. So over to you, Mark. Thanks.
Thanks, Cam. I'll talk a little bit about impact. So with regards to the Indigenous Peoples Advisory Forum, that includes members in many countries from local communities and Indigenous peoples, the work that we're doing is to build understanding, awareness, build general capacity and understanding of the aluminium supply chain to inform and educate those communities. And in Guinea, we've reached out to over 120 communities with more than 5,000 participants in these workshops. We implemented a train the trainer model where we trained 14 IPAF members in Guinea to then undertake the rollout of those workshops. They also helped develop those materials based on our foundation knowledge to share on the industry. We've undertaken those same workshops tailored to the Australian context throughout the remote communities in Northern Australia and the more peri-urban communities in Western Australia. So the aim of these engagement and capacity building workshops and studies are to build that capacity within those communities so they can better engage with ASI members, certified entities, and more broadly, the mining sector and often the energy sector. So if we're talking about impacts, we're looking at those issues. Throughout the IPAF communications and consultation, we learn and hear a lot of feedback about complaints and complaint mechanisms. And within that process, we undertake some training. And in fact, tomorrow night, we've got another round of training with IPAF members on the complaints mechanism and on complaint mechanisms more broadly. And as a result of the feedback in multiple countries, we are in detailed discussion with certified entities on how their complaints mechanisms are working, how people understand them, how they're participating in them, what their staff training requirements are that implement those complaints or grievance mechanisms, and how they're closing out those complaints or grievances. So we're having quite detailed discussions, and we're helping 5 of the biggest bauxite miners in the world work through those issues and support them and share learnings that we've had from multiple places with specific entities. So they're just some examples of some of the impacts that the work with IPAF and beyond certification have had. So as Fiona said earlier, if people are interested to learn more or have a one-on-one discussion, more than happy to have that at any time. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Cam and Mark. I do have a few more questions that have come in advance of the AGM. This one to Chris. There's a couple to Chris, but we'll take them in rounds so that everybody gets a chance. This one is, how is ASI aligning to IAI on the greenhouse gas reduction pathway tool, especially for 1.5 scenario and SBTI? There seems to be a widening gap.
Oh, I don't agree with that last bit.
I'm just reading the question.
No, absolutely. Well, my feeling is that's not been happening, because I tell you what, from the very beginning of this pathways work, our aim has been harmonization, right? It's to use what's been developed elsewhere by other organizations very well, using well-recognized data and accepted methodologies. So that really what the work that we do is only adding to that. We're not trying to replicate, we're not trying to do the work again. We want to use the best science, but apply it in a way that's appropriate for all of our certifying members. And, you know, that was the starting point for this method. We needed a 1.5 degree aligned pathway that covered all direct and indirect emissions and was applicable to all certifying entities. And for ASI, the majority of our certifying entities are not primary producers. You know, the emissions are in primary production, but the majority of our members are actually downstream of primary, and they're consuming both primary and recycled material. And there really didn't exist a method that was able to service all of those needs. Science-based targets had a 2 degree pathway only applicable to the primary, and so we had to deliver this ourselves. And what we did was we used that IAI 1.5 degree sector pathway. We used that to develop our entity specific pathways, and the IAI's work in turn is broadly aligned with the IEA, International Energy Agency's net zero emissions scenario. So already you can see that this is kind of harmonization, this not widening gap, but actually quite close working together. Global economy wide, International Energy Agency, aluminium sector specific IAI, entity specific and auditable us. And in addition to those organizations, of course, we've been talking to RMI, who've recently become ASI members, now sit on our standards committee, who are developing tools for the financial sector to benchmark around aluminium as well, and also some reporting guidance too. So that's my key thing. Is good question. It was not a plant from me, but the answer is that harmonization is the critical piece here. It's about using the same sets of data, similarly scoped, using the best science that there is today. Maybe one thing on that is that the science is going to develop further. This is a really dynamic space. So I think our members and our certifying entities, as they start to use this method, and I encourage people to do that, even if you're not certifying soon, get in touch with me and I'll talk you through it. As they start to do that, they should recognize that the method may well adapt and evolve over time. And every year that the industry doesn't decarbonize, our budget gets smaller and smaller, and the potential slopes in the future get steeper and steeper. So we can expect, as IEA change their data set, that that's going to have an impact on our method as well. So yeah, good harmonization, good working well together. In fact, we have I don't know who sent this question in, but I'll invite you and everyone to the CRU conference workshop day 3 next week, in fact, where we will be with International Aluminium Institute and RMI delivering a workshop which demonstrates how all of these pieces fit together, and we'll do a run through of the tool at the same time.
Thanks very much, Chris. That's and a great plug for that workshop. So another opportunity to kind of look at collaboration and harmonization, coordination, and getting members together. So thank you. I'm going to go to one more question that we've received in advance, and then we'll go back to the Q&A. I know there's a little bit more, which is fantastic. Keep those coming. This question we'll pose to Chinello. So how is the recognition of the certifications granted by ASI promoted, and what are the results in this direction? So perhaps, Chinello, you might want to kind of reflect on kind of the question in terms of how are we communicating our stories of change from members, and what do we do with those?
Yes. So thank you for the question, Sasha. So we promote ASI certifications through the membership, through the ASI website mainly, and through certification announcements that go out on social media and also in our public newsletter, ASI communication channels. And then members also have an opportunity to engage with member stories of change. So this is where we reach out to them, or they can reach into us actually. And then we have an interview to talk about the kind of changes that they're seeing on the ground. When the stories are published, they're published in the newsletter, they're published on the website. And I think the result in terms of what's happening is it's an opportunity for members to be able to tell their story, for people to be able to peer learn, and then see what else can be done with regards to sustainability, because we know that the goal keeps moving. It's not a static point. So members are learning from one another through these stories. And it's also another way for them to engage with the wider membership. So that's what we're doing in that space in terms of helping members amplify what they're doing and tell that story.
Thanks very much, Chinello. Going to the Q&A section of Zoom, we have a new question, which is actually quite aligned with Hugo's question, and there's a common theme around collaboration and partnerships. So we might take those together. I'm wondering whether, Marika, you might want to take a stab at answering these. So just to remind everybody, Hugo's question was, how does ASI see opportunities to support members in aligning their activities towards ASI certification with other standards and frameworks, such as the TNFD, ICMM, nature position, et cetera? Is there scope for collaboration? And then we have a question from Srijit around, I'm interested in knowing how ASI can foster industry partnership collaboration, be it on circularity, supply chain, sustainability, decarbonization. I think we had a good example from Chris around decarbonization, but perhaps there's others, and what does that mean, and how does benchmarking fit into it? So Marika, maybe you have some thoughts on that, and then I can open it up to any other members of the Secretariat who might like to add a different perspective on it.
Thank you, Sasha, and thanks again for the question. It's great to see so many questions coming in around harmonization today. And you and also Fiona have already kind of mentioned a few key things, but I'll just add a bit more from the Secretariat perspective. And of course, within ASI, we do collaborate with a wide range of standards, different initiatives, and downstream sector programs within many different aspects of our work, for example, within standards and standard setting, on greenhouse gas emission pathways, which was what Chris just talked about, assurance and auditor training, and also within our Beyond certification work. So within the partnerships piece, a big part of that is benchmarking, what we call benchmarking and harmonization. And we can divide that into that ASI recognizes external standards and schemes as part of our own assurance programs, such as ISO 14001 and 45001. And also we are being recognized by external standards and schemes. And one of these is in fact also the ICMM performance expectations. We're also recognized by the Responsible Mineral Initiative Risk Readiness Assessment. And we're also a Track A standard under the London Metals Exchange responsible sourcing rules. And we've also been recognized by several green building standards. The aim of all this work, of course, and this has also been mentioned or been asked and came up in the slide of the different definitions, is to increase uptake of ASI by downstream sectors and to reduce also duplication of work and also use all of this benchmarking work for our own learning and improvement. Just to let everyone know, you can find all this information of who we recognize and who we are recognized by on our website. We also have a log that we update monthly of standards and schemes that you can find on Elemental, and some of it is also listed in the assurance manual and how it works if you have ISO certification, for example, and how you can use that in the self-assessment and the audit. Of course, as part of our upcoming standards revision, we'll also be looking at how ASI standards can be more aligned with upcoming due diligence regulation and others. The claims directive is also very important for us. And of course, we're also going to looking at already at the sustainability reporting frameworks, such as the TCFD and the TNFD, and how we can potentially align with those frameworks in the future. As Fiona said, we have a standards benchmarking and harmonization working group that leads all this work. We meet several times a year, so if you are interested in this, please do nominate interested representatives from your organizations to become involved. And also you can write to us anytime really to if you have any recommendations for a standard that we should look at for recognition, then please do write to us, and we'll take it further and see if we can recognize them or they can recognize us. So yeah, it's a very active work stream.
Thanks very much. Would anybody else like to add anything to this, answering those questions around fostering collaboration?
Sasha, maybe I'll just come in for a quick minute.
Chelsea, go for it.
Following on Marika's point, there's been a lot of discussion today about the upcoming revisions of the standards for ASI. And it's important to note that before we launch any kind of revision process, we actually, under ISEAL standard setting codes, are required to do a review, which is a little bit about taking stock of where we are with the current standard, what's working well, what's not working well, and what are really the objectives and outcomes that we want to see with a future revision. So a lot of the priorities that were raised by members today on the call and that we're starting to hear echoed in some of these questions, we will be doing further consultation and discussion with you in the review phase, which we expect will be sort of towards the end of this calendar year. And part of that will be understanding from an entity perspective, a certified entity perspective or a member perspective, where are the other standards and frameworks that you're either already working against, certified against, or looking to implement in the future, and which of those are really priorities for us to focus on in terms of better incorporating and better harmonizing with going forward, because there are many, many, many out there, and we will definitely want to be prioritizing with your input.
Thanks very much. We may, there was the very first question we had in the Q&A kind of function around demand. So has ASI certified products demand been increasing from buyers since the certification program started? Is there data or studies available that can be used by members? Who would like to answer that question?
I can start, and Chris might also be able to talk a little bit about the mass flow data as well. So a few years ago, we did commission CM Group to look at future demand scenarios. So that's published on our website, and possibly someone quick thinking might be able to find that and put a link in the chat, or we can follow that up in an article as well. What we are seeing with the mass flow data under chain of custody certification, so that's obviously where claims move from being about an entity performance to products to material flow. We are seeing a growth year on year, and we're starting to see that push through the supply chain, but downstream demand is still lower than we'd like to see. We're collecting data for last financial year, or last calendar year rather, at the moment, and so we'll be publishing that after mid-year. So we look forward to seeing how that's changing. I know Chris has been involved certainly from the mass flow model, so we layer the ASI chain of custody material flow data on top of IAI data. So Chris, did you want to add anything further to that in the last few minutes?
Yeah, it's just to say, well, the links in the chat to go and take a look at some of that data. And as Fiona said, that attrition, as you kind of get further down the supply chain, of course, you have far more entities at the end than you do at the beginning as well. I mean, you do see that increase in demand for ASI bauxite, ASI alumina, and ASI aluminium as you flow through that. What's going to be interesting to look at in the future is how that's segmented. I think you know at the moment that's a singular material flow for the global industry as a whole with ASI overlain, but the segments, you know, which segments are consuming? Is it automotive? Is it cans? And how are they looking to Gerald's and others' point earlier on, increase things like recycled content or differentiation based on their greenhouse gas footprint in the future? And that's going to be interesting to see that almost addition to ASI certification, that added extra that people want to differentiate themselves in the market. And the beauty is, I guess, the aluminium sector is we have broadly, as well as within ASI, quite good data. You know, talking to the copper guys yesterday, and order of magnitude smaller, but far more complexity and far more difficult for them to get hold of industry data. Whereas for the aluminium side, that demand piece is quite well known, well understood. We have some published material, I think, and also I'll be happy to share other peer review publications as well as ASI publications and articles on this material flow in the future too. And I think it lends itself to the update of the standard, the revision of the standard as well, to look at you know, where this future demand is going to be, which consuming segments are asking for ASI material or ASI certification, and what are they using it for? Is it to meet regulation at the border as material crosses into Europe or North America? Are they using it to talk to customers or even to final consumers? So that needs to be understood. That claims piece is really important, and the material flow underpins that. You know, you can't begin to make those claims without having systems that enable you to do that. So yeah, there we go. But any questions from those who are out there on this kind of stuff, yeah, get in touch, always there to help. Yeah.
Thanks very much, Chris. And if there are, I know there aren't any other questions that we have in the Q&A function at this point in time, but if there's other questions that you have, if you want to know more information, or if you really want to find the details of something that we discussed earlier on, please feel free to reach out to anyone. Any of the Secretariat or board members after the AGM. We're always interested in hearing from you and kind of being interested in understanding and being able to respond effectively to member questions and comments and suggestions. We are nearing the end of the time we have for the AGM. We have one final Slido that I would like everybody to fill in. The question is, what would you like to hear more about from ASI? So please, final thoughts, comments, questions, things that you want to hear more about from ASI. This will just really help guide us in terms of what do we do to be able to share insights and what kinds of information are you interested in, as well as what should be on our agenda from a strategy perspective as well. So please, we have a few people typing in there. That's fantastic. Opportunities for task forces. There's been a lot of suggestions on different ways to participate or kind of work through topics. So that's fantastic. Greenhouse gas pathways and members dialogue have been really valuable. So thank you, everyone. Keep going. I know we're running out of time, but if you have any particular thoughts, that would be fantastic. While you keep going on that, we won't move to the final slide, but keep going. I just wanted to, before wrapping up with the AGM, I wanted just to thank everyone for attending. We really do value your time and taking kind of the time out of very, very busy days and schedules to listen, actively participate in the governance kind of process that is the AGM. It is really important as a vehicle to get member input, feedback, and as a transparency and a respect vehicle with members. So thank you very much. I'd like to thank fellow board members. I'd like to thank our translators who have done a fantastic job. and all the Secretariat for an absolutely amazing job in pulling this AGM together. It doesn't happen automatically. So thank you everybody for your time and your contributions. We do have a few more of what people would like to hear, which is fantastic. Thank you. And knowing that we are a couple minutes over, with that, I'd like to thank everybody, and I would officially like to bring this AGM to a close. Thanks, everyone.